Hello and welcome to another episode of UpNext. And on this episode, we have a very, very special guest. He's joining us from Tucson in Arizona, and very special Amchi guest. Let me put it this way. He's joining us from the United States. He's been in all his most part of his career, in fact, in technology in SAP, and he was with Platinum Consultant. Is from where he's retired. But post-retirement, his job has been extremely exciting and more exciting. He being an author, and an author where he goes back to his roots, as to say, and that's what we're going to discuss. But first, let me introduce our guest on up next, Mr. Ram Halady. Hi, I'll say Ram. Hi, Ram, and welcome to Up Next. So amazing to have you on our show.
Hey, Santosh, thank you for having me, and please call me Ram. Um, and this is really indeed a pleasure to be on this show. It's one of the cornerstone shows that you have been doing for so many years. I can't believe that how the world would be without such programs to highlight the work of so many different individuals otherwise would have gone unnoticed.
Sure, sure. Thank you so much, Ram, for these kind words of appreciation. In fact, our audiences are, of course, most of it is from India, but at the same time, a lot in US and Europe, and even in the East, as Southeast Asia. The reason being WhatsApp and social media helping us to spread the message across. So you could hopefully have a great audience there once we get this episode out. So, Ram, you spent your primary career in technology. How come writing a book instead of a code? I'm sure it's a different kind of a transition from writing on, did it really impact on your new career as a writer?
It, technology, as you know, is can be very overwhelming
Yeah.
and challenging and
Hmm.
constantly changing.
Hmm.
It is something that if you work in that field in a competitive level and a professional level in the
Yeah.
world stage,
Yeah.
you are always required to reinvent
Hmm.
not just the software and the services that you offer, but to a great degree yourself.
Yeah.
And in a way that I switched around different things in SAP, working within enterprise software, and then moving on to supply chain planning for the last 20 years before I retired. And
Hmm.
I worked with all the top 500 companies, 100 companies in US in one fashion or the other,
Yeah.
and then traveled around the world, different continents, not only for their subsidiaries, but different companies in those parts also. So you got a chance to work with diverse cultures and different needs, and still trying to understand what the technology was. And so in a way, it benefited me in two ways. One was that I was able to observe different cultures, different corporations in different product lines and planning spaces and their journeys to achieving core competencies.
Yeah.
But there was always one thing that struck, there was a set of core values
Hmm.
that it was always common.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I benefited from in that in one way. The other thing was more of a revelation to me was that I realized that I had the skill to ability to simplify things so
Yeah.
that people can understand in the way that they can and make the most of it to
Yeah.
put to use.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I tried that same thing. If I can talk to all these customers
Yeah.
and put them at ease and trying to make things simpler,
Yeah.
why not? And so I started writing stories. Jeannie, my wife, and I don't have any kids, but
Hmm.
Jeannie's family,
Yeah.
she has three nieces, and they have kids, and we call them our nephews, but really they're like grandkids to us.
Yeah.
And when they were young, Only like 3 years, 3.5 years, even some of them were like 1.5 years when they started visiting us in Chicago, where we used to live before moving to Tucson. I used to always have a story,
Okay.
a special story for them, in which they would be the heroes, and they would be the children, and they would be making things right, that something goes wrong or whatever, and they would be assisted by animals that would talk to them, and only they can understand or hear them. So they had some special powers to, so to speak, over the adults to put the world in a better place. This
Wonderful.
was the collection of stories called Reuben's Adventures
Awesome.
on Uncle Ram's farm, which I created out of imagination, something close to like a Bangalore type thing while we grew up.
Oh,
And
okay.
these stories that I wrote to them for their birthdays, holidays, and vacation time, whenever they come, and all those things, over a period of time, and they got compiled and got published. This was in 2012, 2011. But at the time, I wasn't really very serious about writing as a career. I was too busy with corporate life.
True.
But once I retired in 2021, and I needed something to do, so after a couple of years, then I took back to the writing again. And it took me a while to get my first novel, Last Bench,
So
published.
there was that inner feeling, the inner urge to write a novel, which probably started with your baby steps of writing those books for your grandkids.
Right,
I think
they were
that's
my muse.
absolutely wonderful. In fact, for grandparents and parents out there, remember there's, whilst we may talk from the Western world, or old MacDonald had a farm, we also have an Uncle Ram who had a farm. And that too, an auntie uncle. That's really interesting to know,
Right.
Mr. Ram.
For
So
those who can maybe relate to it, Honavar, Marbali was the
the
place that we used
setting,
to go to.
yeah,
My uncle, he and his brother actually had a farm, and
uh-huh,
2 or 3 glorious summers that we spent over a course of like 5 years time frame.
yeah,
We always just loved it, So that whole thing, running around and having friends, and climbing trees and
yeah,
having different fruits and all that. So I just kind of put that in all the different. And but one of the things that I did was, in that I was telling a story, but it was all something telling about an aspect of life. So there was always some moral
messaging, yeah,
aspect to each and every short story that they would do, and they just loved it. And when they were growing up a little bit and could understand a bit, I am in a comic book.
awesome.
That's what they would tell their friends, and so they were heroes in more than one way.
Absolutely. So, Ram, I see that your book, right, Last Bench, and we'll talk a lot more about that. You've dedicated this book to your mom, right? She is your centerpiece, where the book is, for whom this book is all about. Uh, Tell us why, and how has been the growing up years for you in India? And I believe more or less the setting is of the 1970s, right?
Well, I considered, like they say, guru and your dad and your mom.
Yeah.
Those are the three pillars of your learning. And
Mm.
for that, my first guru, or so to speak, was my grandfather. So he was
Mm.
my first storyteller.
Mm.
He would read Mahabharata and all these different epics
Yeah.
during the day, and in
Yeah.
the night, evening time, when it came for bedtime stories, he would tell them. So in a way, I was influenced by his storytelling.
Mm.
And then my dad was English professor before he switched to sales and marketing field when we moved to Bangalore in 1970.
Mm.
So there's some people say there's always that DNA. But really, my mom was the true inspiration in writing
Mm.
this novel and setting that in 1970s.
Yeah.
Because 1970, when we moved to Bangalore,
Mm.
it was not the best of economic times. It was still, we were probably what the second generation after the post-independence.
Yeah.
And my dad having moved from a different part of India to Bangalore, he had a difficult time finding a job and all those things. So we moved from being somewhat an affluent family in our eyes, at least those days, to almost closer to economic
crises. Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
fight every day. So
Yeah.
but there was something special about those times. Even if our neighbors, community, everybody, even if they didn't have much for themselves,
Yeah.
individually or their own household, they always came together and helped us. And my mom did the same thing to everybody. When she passed away, I was unfortunately stuck in India. And of course, as the Hindu customs go, you have to perform the final rites very quickly.
Yeah.
But I was told by my siblings that there was a long procession that followed her to the
to crematorium. Yeah.
site. Even the people who sold the vegetables, in those days, people used to come in the carts pushing the things, and everybody, the whole Subramania Nagar, it was kind of behind that day. So and that was done by her way of life, with the love and sacrifices, and always helped everybody, not just us.
Yeah.
So that was the reason why I dedicated my first debut rather the novel to my mom for all your love and sacrifices to make everything possible.
Okay, so unfortunately you couldn't be a part of this, in her last journey. But I think the way you put through this novel and you dedicate it to her, I believe for you it's a kind of a closure in some ways. That you tried your best, to be with her.
Yes,
absolutely. Let's talk about. Sorry. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, we can talk more about it as we go through. By writing this particular novel in the 1970s, and especially in the that environment I just talked about, it brought back so many memories. Reconnecting with not just my relatives and all those things, my friends and other people and all that. And here, and they all remember those times in India when they grew up and they had to, had similar experiences and all those things. So it was this journey of Last Bench has taken me to reconnect, not just with my mom's past and memories, but in a way, in a larger sense, to others.
Wonderful. So let's talk about the novel itself, Last Bench. What does the narrative take us through as you read this book? That's one. The second is the response, the feedback that you had from your readers, right? This time your reader is not one of your office colleagues who probably went through your code, but now it's an actually storytelling that has happened. And what's been so what's the storyline all about? And what inspired you, Ram, to write this book?
The story is about a 15-year-old growing up, I would say it was about the same age as I was in 1977. But this is not a memoir by any means. This is a fictional novel. But I created this character, Vicky Vikram. And he doesn't. This is about growing up in that 1970s timeline. Just after post emergency period, I think there was just about when the generation took off. But he is still a boy, growing up into manhood, coming of age time. But I wrote this story with his point of view and trying to come to terms with his how he sees his friends. And this is about him learning about true meaning of friendship, and trying to keep his commitment. And and making some mistakes along the way, as most of us have done in our lives. But how do you recover from them? So it's a tale of friendship, loyalties, resilience, and redemption. But I set this story in a school setting. And I was initially I was actually working with a title called First Bench, meaning that this boy Vicky sits in the last bench, but he's really a bright guy and he works his way to the first bench. But then, as I was writing that story, I changed my whole thing. Why write about just the first bench who would become doctors and engineers, the stereotype? I mean, they're all good, successful professions, but what about the larger population in the class, and what happens to the other people? And so I put him in the last bench and gave him a bunch of friends and characters, and also some mentors to him. I fashioned his neighbor Ajju. He calls him lovingly, or the old man Ajju, and he is one of the mentors. So I gave him. He doesn't have a dad. He's living with a single mom in a poor family situation. But he has great, relationships with all his friends, and he goes beyond his normal thing to help other people. So when this type of background is a friend who sits in the first bench, he's one of the top bright guys who can have a real good career in future if he just manages to finish the grades, but is put in a difficult situation when Shaker, his friend, his dad asked him to quit school and help him meet the expenses towards the dowry and the marriage. Those customs that are still probably in the far from corners of India these days, even. But it wasn't uncommon those days. And so he comes to Vicky for help, and Vicky doesn't really think twice, and he just commits to help him. In fact, he also promises to help him in Gudda Ganapati. There's like one real nice temple in Malleshwaram area in Bangalore, where the school is set up with. And he looks at the direction of the temple and says, "Oh, Lord Ganesha will give me some way to make this work." But he doesn't realize the challenge that or the enormity of the challenge that faces him in trying to raise money as a 15-year-old boy, trying to help for the whole dowry and other things that his own family is not able to do. So this journey takes him, but he doesn't give up, and he pursues that almost an impossible task, but that forces him to compromise on some things. So he faces several moral dilemmas along the way, and he makes some mistakes, but then he recovers from it. So I set this story in a way that people can relate to the essence of it. It's a school, a school setting. People might say, "Oh, that's really, if you think of school and other things, young age." Young adults now, it is usually romance or fantasy, or but 50 years back,
it was a different world, completely different world.
They had the weight of the world on their shoulders.
Yeah, absolutely. Unlike the social media world today.
Right.
Absolutely. In fact, the title of this book itself is very interesting. Last Bench, where anecdotally, as we all know, when you talk of last benchers of any school or a college, it's all about the bad boys or the mischief mongers in any classroom. So it's interesting. You give a face to those last benchers, probably. And talk good about them. I think that's what the narrative is all about in this novel. So tell me, you also describe certain Indian food items in this novel, and also a couple of games, Indian original games. In fact, Pagda is, as I think, in fact, even my generation didn't see that. Pagda or chess and cricket, we all know, and even badminton. But that's what life is. Life was all about, right? In fact, of course, we still have a bit of cricket and chess because of a lot of Indians really doing great in that sport. But at the same time, with the face to face not having, and it's Facebook that really commands our life. I think these games have played a big, big role in our lives in those yesteryears. So talk a little about these books and food.
Yeah, so the food, food and the games, even the movies, the things that we were really into it. Like for example, you could pick up a stick or a little thing that looks like a bat and
Yeah,
a ball that kind
yeah,
of moves forward, and you can have a pickup game right in front of your house on a street.
yeah.
So it was very inexpensive, and the whole neighborhood boys got together,
Hmm.
and you played after school, and so it was also a way of bonding. When it comes to chess or a pagada or anything, this was always how you built your family bonding with your aunts, uncles, and
Hmm. Hmm.
grandfather would spend time and teach some of those difficult things when you're still young and trying to learn, and you're guided by those.
Yeah.
And you remember those very well. And I wanted to infuse that, and I did throughout the story. But also but also the time of greats. If you
Hmm.
look back, Sunil Gavaskar, everybody knows the man with the centuries and all
Hmm.
that. Lesser known maybe, but in those days, Vishwanath was one of the player. When it comes to technique.
Yeah.
There is a statistically, even the true statistic, which is whenever Vishwanath scored a century,
Hmm.
Indian team never lost that match.
Hmm.
It's for the history written.
Hmm.
So I even made it as part of my story that the temple priests would perform special
Puja.
pujas and all those things, and you listen to this radio commentary, and so there's even a whole game of cricket match that Vicky wants to excel himself, and he makes that impossible catch. So
Hmm.
I infused some of these games and the food and other things that we go through in our life, taken for granted, but you need to reflect, you know, several years later, they just really stand out.
Yeah. Absolutely. In fact, you bring out so much of memory way back, right? In the 70s, the Malleshwaram of the 70s, the Ganpati Ganesha temple out there. You talk of Pagras, which is a game which, even to be honest, as I mentioned, our generation hasn't seen. I think it really takes you back to those school days and those life was very, very simple. But tell me one thing, writing this book is one thing. Who's the kind of audiences that you're looking for this novel?
I when I retired, my when I thought, okay, I'll write a novel, I thought about different storylines and other things, but
Yeah.
there was one common theme that requirement, so to speak, I had in my mind was to expose the readers at large
Hmm.
about the wonderful culture of India. So I knew that whatever I wrote, then I will try to bring it up. And
Hmm.
also, it was driven by the fact that, of course, you walk into Barnes and Noble or browse on Amazon. There is so many millions of books written in with the background in Europe and USA and all those things.
Yeah.
But I was wondering to myself, why not write about Bangalore, the
Yeah.
wonderful, beautiful garden city of India, where I grew up,
Yeah.
and about India.
Hmm.
So that was one of the drivers for setting that story and writing it. So
Hmm.
when I look back and in terms of the audience, so to
Hmm.
speak, as look at it like two or three ways. One
Hmm.
is that in 1970s, 80s, or even early 60s, there was a whole wave of talent,
Yeah.
doctors, engineers, scientists
Mm.
in every field and endeavor from India emigrated to other parts of the world, mainly US
Yeah.
and the UK, for better economic opportunities.
True.
And they have done wonderfully, successfully. They have been successful, just like me in my field.
Yeah.
And this has, they do carry that period in time because, like me, that portion of the lifetime in India where they grew up with the family and have those fond memories,
Yeah.
that's kind of frozen for them.
Mm.
So I wanted to tap into that energy and provide that nostalgic return,
Mm.
perhaps for those audiences, but
Mm.
also for any young adults. When
Mm.
you think about folks who have been even born in US,
Yeah.
but they have a deep roots in India from family background. They do go back once in so many years, but that's not the same connection like
Yeah.
growing up.
Absolutely.
Um, and 50 years back, life was vastly different. Even
Mm.
before iPhone, we can't think of it. Before
Yeah.
Google, we can't think of it. Nowadays, but life was completely different. You
Mm.
didn't even have a TV set, radio. I mean,
Mm.
those were luxuries.
Yeah.
Besides the 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
So so that audience,
Mm.
I think, can appreciate growing up. And the third one was really, as my goal was, like anybody who wanted to get a better sense of Indian culture, and then they can relate to it. And
Mm.
some of the readers here, like even Chicago and in different parts of US and all that, they said, Ram, one of the things I did, I have a map, of
Uh-huh.
the area where the story takes place and all that. But I didn't really name Bangalore is named, but I didn't really name the suburb Malleshwaram.
Mm.
So it could be any part of Bangalore. But they said, look, this is no different. If you go back to 1970s, even here where people were very trusting with each other and
Yeah.
they can relate to it. And this could be, south side of Chicago in any moment
Yeah.
or any other part of Midwest suburbs
True.
or far-flung corner of the US. So I think in a way, my goal was to expose the culture, but also help other people relate to the story and also reconnect with their own growing up,
Absolutely.
emotional
Absolutely.
connection.
But there must be sitting out of Tucson. It must be pretty challenging in getting this book and that to your first debut novel, getting it published. How challenging was that? How did you even get into connects with? It's not an easy job when it comes to see writing is one thing, and then getting published is another ball game altogether.
But yeah, I mean, I thought writing was the toughest one,
Hmm.
and it was not easy for me, but it came
Yeah.
with some blessings from above.
Hmm.
But getting published was the next biggest one.
Hmm.
And I tried the normal route of first, I thought that, okay, this story takes place in India. Why not try it with Indian
Publishers. Yeah.
publishing houses and
Hmm.
agents there? I did not get even a remotely a good response.
Hmm.
Then I tried the route in the US, which is, you may already know this, but in US, most of the publishing work has to be done through the agents.
Yeah.
There is no way that the big houses
Hmm.
will pick up anything from somebody directly.
Yeah.
So the finding agents itself, so I took up on that task, and I must have gotten more than 150 rejections,
Wow.
and then out of the blue, then the thought came to me, I'm trying to get it published in US or somewhere here so that it will have a better reach.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was having difficulty pulling it off. Why
Hmm.
not try UK, which has much more closer bond with India?
Yeah.
And Pegasus was one of the publishing houses that were open to submissions, and I just got lucky with that.
Okay, wonderful.
So, but it
So
is really very, very challenging
yeah,
to find a publishing and then getting it published, and then it doesn't stop there. Then you realize those two were the easy ones, and then you'll have to do
yeah.
the last part, which is getting the word out.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's where the next challenge probably was in terms of readers. How did you find the right reader for a book that was set in India for an audiences globally who probably even don't know what the India of the 70s was? So, what kind of feedback have you got from some of these readers, if at all?
You, uh, um, if you go to Goodreads, which
Yeah.
is in my personal view, there are like two criteria for success from a readership acceptance. One is, of course, Amazon in US
Yeah.
as the dominant presence.
Mm.
But the Goodreads is a global site for readers to connect with the authors and books, and they post their reviews as they go through it.
Yeah.
And there has been some very good reviews. Some of them, of course, started with my close family and friends, a group of them. But as it grew to a larger base, now you see a lot more mainstream readers providing their inputs.
Yeah.
And it's been something very interesting to see through their eyes.
Yeah.
And for them, they loved these stories. One American in Tucson, he travels from Colorado to Tucson for the fall. We call them snowbirds. So he walked up to me one day and said, we connect in one of these monthly meetings here in Tucson, and he said, I read your book, and he had such a good word about how he really felt, and he had a strong connection to India.
Yeah.
His mom was Britisher. His dad was an American, and his mom was born in India.
Ah, interesting. Okay.
And they had lived in the UK for some time before. As a child, he moved over to US.
Yeah.
And he had never been to India in true sense. He might have visited just once when he was older, but he never really had that point of view
Opportunity to
about
be
it.
actually about India. Yeah.
Right. And so he just loved, and for him, it was like connecting with his mom.
True.
And and there was another one, Elizabeth. She said she is 70s, and she said, I have four grandkids, and these are the values that we would want to instill in
Instill in
our
them.
grandkids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're no different, Ram. It's the land may be different,
Yeah.
the language and other customs may be different, but it's the same.
Yeah.
So in a way that it kind of affirms my belief, there are, like I was telling you, with even across diverse cultures, there are certain things that are common, right?
Yeah.
In one place I was telling that, I opened my presentation with saying I had my arms like this, and I said namaskar. Of course, none of them in the audience were Indians.
Yeah.
And I told them, you didn't understand what I said, but you understand this.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a common
gesture.
denominator. Absolutely.
It's a gesture of respect, and and um, uh, good wishes, greetings. There is even an emoji that everybody uses. So there are certain things that transcends cultures. Among that is the coming of age in a good way with the morals and things like that. And so I'm really happy that I'm connecting with not only the Indians of diverse communities here in US and everywhere else, but in the mainstream of Americans that see a lot more into it.
Absolutely. I can completely imagine. So, is there some kind of an advice to budding writers? There are lots who want to write about their life stories, their learnings. They probably see how life in a very different context and maybe from a different lens. What's the kind of advice you have for such writers, whether in the United States or India or even elsewhere? What are those stepping stones one needs to actually cross over to be successful as a author, probably?
Or writing amounts to a different kinds of topics, genres,
Yeah,
style, prose, language skills. All of that comes into play. But for me, speaking from my experience, I would say that the fundamental thing for writers, budding writers, or wannabe writers, and I still think that I'm writer in the making. I've got one novel, but I'm still in the like my career, right? It
yeah,
takes so many years and projects and customers before you're really proficient. So I need
true.
much more accomplished to be that writer in a banner of that caliber. But one thing I would say is that finding your own voice and not really yielding to formulas or genres of that kind and cheap thrills and manipulative things that everybody wants to sell. Write a story in 5 days or whatever things. But I would say find a voice and try to stick to that. Be true to yourself. Eventually, you'll be glad for it.
Yeah,
It is frustrating, but eventually you'll be glad for it.
yeah,
The second
absolutely.
thing I would probably say is, my experience with writing this novel. As soon as I wrote my story, which was done in like 6 weeks, just
Yeah.
punching it out and punching it out. And this is true story. So I took that first draft without even grammatic proofing or anything, nothing. No, I just showed it to my wife. She said, "This is terrible."
She was your first reader and she
This
gave
is
you the
so.
honest feedback.
Of course, Jean is from here, and
Yeah.
then I approached my younger sister back in the US, and she read it, and then she said, "Ram, I cried. There's something in this. You have to go." Then I got so excited about it.
Hmm.
I started sharing it with my close dear friends and my cousin Radhika. She's very much established writer in Bangalore.
Hmm.
She writes for children's sections and other
Hmm.
things for
Yeah.
all the major newspapers and weekend editorial.
Hmm.
But I got a lot of feedback and all that thing. There was good because I got the encouragement, not of encouragement, and my enthusiasm was more. But I realized that I should not have done those things as a
Hmm.
writer because I should have taken that responsibility to go through myself, clean it out and do a first good draft,
Hmm.
get that all out and then don't worry about it. And then again, go back and do a 2 or 3 rounds before you have a really a good thing and then put it in front of other people. Then they would be actually able to give a more meaningful feedback because that they had seen that in the earliest and then every probably revision version so many times they just couldn't spot the difference. They
Yeah.
were too close to the story to be able to offer any useful advice.
Yeah.
So that it took me a little longer to reach out to some other people that they did not know me as a way as my family
Hmm.
to get some of the better inputs
Yeah.
to make it final edits.
Yeah.
So I would say that enthusiasm is good,
Hmm.
but trying to share that in a premature way that
True.
could backfire on you, and
True.
and you might even think of it twice or change tracks.
Yeah.
I, I think sticking to your voice and being convinced that there is something here
Yeah.
is really essential.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. For you, being an author is your second career, anyways, and it's a work in progress culture, right? It moves on, and in fact, it reminds me of a couple of years back when I was in Chicago. There was this meme about Chicago that Chicago has two seasons, right? One is the winter, and second is the construction, which is the road construction all along the way when there is no winter. So, but yeah, but then I think that's the way life is all about, right? And uh, last thoughts about what's next steps in terms of writing, in terms of storytelling. Any secrets that you would love to share on this podcast?
Um, it's been rewarding, my experience of this writing wiki and giving a life of its own, and the journey has been taking to different parts. And people come back to me and say, "What is next in line for
Yeah.
Wiki?" And in towards the end of that first novel, I set him up as he becoming a police inspector. Um, and I thought that I will give him a little bit more challenging, that not a school setting anymore now, but in politics and a murder mystery and a political thriller. So that's what I'm working on as my second novel.
Wonderful.
But one of the other things that I liked when I wrote Last Bench was the not the genres of the political or the mystery, but the fiction itself as fiction, because it gives you a lot more freedom to come up with themes and ideas and characters than a set structure that you expect in a more popular fiction. So I'm committed to writing stories based in Bangalore and India. That's my commitment. I think I'll stick to it, and bringing out the culture and the nuances of it. I still like the idea of writing in the 70s and 80s, but I want to do, if I can juggle both, do the popular fiction with Vicky as the character going on, but also create other characters and other point of views that would be different. I want to do something different every time I do undertake a new challenge. So that's what I have in mind. Let's see how that turns out.
Absolutely. On that very, very optimistic, positive note, many thanks, Ram, for joining us on this podcast series of UpNext, and all the very, very best for the upcoming projects underway coming in from Tucson. And I'm sure you look back at India from a different lens, and I'm sure those stories are making great waves, not just in India but across the world, and especially in the US. We've been for the last odd number of years, and I'm sure you get great feedback and readership across the genres. So many thanks once again for joining us on this podcast, Ram.
Thank you so much for your wishes and this opportunity to connect with your followers.
Thank you.
And you in person. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks. And well, with that, we come to the end of this episode of Up Next and the Amchi Legends series. Big thanks to Samiir Halady, who's been a big instrumental person in production and, of course, the marketing of these podcast series. And well, with me, Santosh Sirur, and my guest, Mr. Ram Halady, author. Many thanks for joining us on this podcast. Bye and take care.
Thank you.